At 76, Norm Abram has finally addressed the rumors everyone's been whispering about for years. But not in the way people expected. For a man who spent decades in the spotlight without ever chasing attention, his quiet confirmation sent shockwaves through longtime fans. Some thought it was about his health. Others believed something bigger had been going on behind the scenes. The truth sits somewhere between what was said and what was never explained. And once you hear what Norm actually confirmed, it completely changes how his long, mysterious step back from television should be understood. For decades, Norm Abram wasn't just a TV personality, he was a constant. Week after week, year after year, viewers tuned in and saw the same calm voice, the same steady hands, and the same quiet confidence that made everything feel manageable. That's why, when he slowly started appearing less, people noticed immediately. There was no dramatic goodbye, no announcement, just absence. And that silence is what set everything off. Fans began asking the same questions online. Where did Norm go? Why wasn't he showing up like before? Some pointed out how different he looked in later appearances. Others wondered if something behind the scenes had changed. Without answers, theories filled the gap. And the longer the silence lasted, the louder those theories became. What made it more unsettling was how out of character it felt. Norm had always been reliable, predictable in the best way. So when the routine broke, it didn't feel accidental, it felt intentional. People weren't. People used to guessing when it came to him, and suddenly that's all anyone could do. Forums, comment sections, and fan pages began replaying old episodes, comparing timelines, dissecting every public appearance. Not because they wanted drama, but because Norm mattered to them. When someone becomes part of your life for over 4 decades, their quiet disappearance feels personal. But while the rumors kept growing, the real explanation stayed just out of reach. And what finally came next would give fans answers, while somehow raising even more questions. The moment the rumors stopped feeling like guesses was the day the official announcement dropped. After more than 4 decades with this old house, it was confirmed that Norm Abram was stepping away. No dramatic press tour, no emotional farewell tour, just a calm, almost understated confirmation that he was hanging up his tool belt. And somehow, that made it hit even harder. For many fans, this was the first time the silence finally had a name. Retirement? A word that sounds simple, but didn't feel simple at all in this case. Norm wasn't just another cast member leaving a show, he was the show for a lot of people. His presence had become part of the rhythm of their lives, and now that rhythm was changing for good. What caught people off guard was how matter-of-fact it all sounded. Norm didn't hint at drama. He didn't lean into emotion. He framed it as a natural decision, saying he felt he had done everything he could do on television. To him, it was just time. But to viewers, that explanation felt almost too clean. Instead of calming speculation, the announcement fueled it. If everything was fine, why now? Why so quietly? Why no long goodbye? The more composed Norm appeared, the more fans read between the lines, searching for meaning that wasn't spelled out. And just when people thought the announcement was the end of the story, another unexpected moment brought everything back into focus. What really kept the conversation alive wasn't the retirement itself. It was the way Norm explained it. In interviews following the announcement, his words were short, calm, and almost disarmingly simple. He said he felt he'd done everything he could do on television, and that it was time to step away. No hints, no emotional backstory, just a quiet statement that felt final. For someone else, that explanation might have ended the discussion, but coming from Norm, it only deepened the mystery. Fans weren't used to reading between the lines with him. He'd built a reputation on clarity, precision, and honesty. So when his answer sounded that clean, people started wondering what wasn't being said. Some took his words at face value. After all, 4 decades on one show is a lifetime. Others weren't so sure. They replayed the quote, analyzing the tone more than the message. Did he sound tired? Relieved? Was this a personal decision, or one shaped by circumstances no one wanted to name out loud? What made it more intriguing was how consistent he stayed. No matter the interview, the message never changed. He didn't elaborate. He didn't correct speculation. He didn't push back against rumors either. He simply repeated the same idea and moved on. That silence created space, and people filled it fast. Because when someone known for building things step by step chooses not to explain his final move, it feels intentional. And as fans searched for hidden meaning, another narrative quietly took over the conversation. One that would follow Norm whether he addressed it or not. As the official explanation stayed short, a different conversation started spreading online. One Norm never addressed directly. Fans began focusing on his appearance in later years, especially noticeable weight loss. Side-by-side screenshots started circulating. Comments picked apart interviews frame by frame, and before long, speculation turned into assumed answers, even though nothing had been confirmed. To be clear, no verified reports ever backed up these claims. No announcements, no statements, just theories repeating themselves until they felt real. That's how fast online narratives grow when silence leaves room to speculate. People weren't trying to be cruel. Most sounded genuinely worried. Norm had become familiar, almost family-like, and concern quickly turned into rumor. What made it worse was how often the same assumptions resurfaced. Each time someone asked where he'd gone, the same guesses appeared underneath. And over time, those guesses stopped being framed as questions. They became statements. That's when the line between concern and misinformation blurred. Norm's refusal to engage only fueled it further. He didn't deny anything. He didn't clarify. He simply stayed quiet and kept his focus elsewhere. For fans used to him explaining every cut and measurement, that silence felt uncomfortable. Ironically, the more respectful and private he remained, the louder the speculation grew. People mistook boundaries for confirmation, and without realizing it, many were reacting not to facts, but to fear of losing a figure who had been steady for most of their lives. But just when the conversation felt stuck in rumor, something unexpected shifted the tone completely and reframed how people saw Norm's exit. Everything shifted when the tribute episode aired. Titled "The House That Norm Built," it wasn't framed as a goodbye, but that's exactly how it felt. The episode walked through decades of craftsmanship, teaching moments, and quiet leadership that shaped generations of viewers. And for many fans, it landed with unexpected emotional weight. What stood out wasn't sadness. It was respect. The way colleagues spoke about Norm made it clear this wasn't a sudden exit or a forced decision. It felt planned, thoughtful, intentional. Stories focused less on his absence and more on how deeply his presence had shaped the show itself. That alone changed the tone of the conversation. Instead of feeding rumors, the tribute highlighted consistency. Norm wasn't stepping away because something went wrong. He was stepping away because he'd already built something that would last. The timing mattered too. Airing on his birthday, the episode felt symbolic, like closing a chapter exactly where it began. Still, fans couldn't ignore how final it felt. Seeing old clips, hearing longtime collaborators reflect, and watching Norm accept the moment without drama made people realize something important. This wasn't a disappearance. It was a conclusion. For some viewers, that brought peace. For others, it raised a new question. If Norm was healthy, respected, and still deeply connected to his work, why did the goodbye feel so permanent? And that question leads directly to the detail most people overlooked, the part of Norm's life that never actually stopped moving forward. What many people missed in all the speculation was the fact that Norm never truly walked away from what he loved. He stepped away from television, not from woodworking. While cameras stopped rolling, his influence quietly stayed everywhere. The new Yankee workshop didn't vanish. The plans, projects, and lessons remained accessible, still teaching long after new episodes ended. That distinction matters. Norm didn't retreat. He redirected. Friends and colleagues made it clear that his decision was about pace, not ability. After decades of deadlines and production schedules, he chose a slower rhythm, one where his work could speak for itself without needing constant visibility. Fans who looked closely noticed this shift. His name continued to appear connected to woodworking education and archives. His voice lived on through projects people were still building in their garages and workshops. In many ways, Norm became more permanent after stepping away from TV, not less. This also explained why he never felt the need to correct rumors. He wasn't trying to disappear, and he wasn't trying to reassure strangers either. He had already said what mattered to him. The rest was noise, and that's when the bigger realization started to settle in. The rumors weren't growing because something was wrong with Norm. They were growing because people weren't ready to let him go. And once that clicks, the so-called confirmation everyone talks about starts to look very different than people expected. By this point, the picture becomes a lot clearer. When people say Norm Abram confirmed the rumors, what he actually confirmed was far less dramatic than the internet made it sound. He confirmed that he was done with television. That's it. No hidden message, no coded confession, just a straightforward decision that somehow got rewritten into something much bigger. The rumors weren't born from facts. They were born from attachment. Norm had been part of people's routines for over 40 years. He showed up consistently, explained things calmly, and never chased attention. So when that presence stopped, viewers didn't just notice it, they felt it. And when people don't get emotional closure, they start creating their own explanations. Norm never fed into that cycle. He didn't tease a comeback. He didn't deny every theory. He didn't give long, dramatic interviews to clear the air. He simply stood by his original words and moved on. In a strange way, that restraint became the loudest statement of all. The confirmation wasn't about health scares or hidden struggles. It was about boundaries, about choosing when a chapter ends without needing to justify it to millions of strangers. And that's what made it so hard for people to accept. In the end, the rumors say more about the audience than they do about Norm. They show how rare it is to see someone walk away at the top, on their own terms, without spectacle. And that's the part that still lingers, not what Norm stopped doing, but how quietly and confidently he chose to do it. At 76, Norm Abram didn't reveal some shocking secret or hidden struggle. What he confirmed was something far more rare, the choice to step away on his own terms. In a world where public figures cling to the spotlight, Norm did the opposite, and that silence made people uncomfortable. The rumors grew not because of what he said, but because of what people weren't ready to accept. His legacy was never tied to constant visibility. It was built through decades of consistency, trust, and craftsmanship that still lives on in workshops everywhere. Norm didn't disappear. He simply finished the job. And maybe that's why his story still resonates, not because of drama or controversy, but because it reminds people that endings don't always come with explanations. Sometimes the most powerful confirmation is knowing when to put the tools down and walking away without needing applause.